Now to what's trending in true crime. What's really going on in Delphi, Indiana? The back and forth between the judge and Richard Allen's former lawyers is getting stranger and more intense by the day. You've got the judge telling everyone that the attorneys have withdrawn. Andrew Baldwin initially complied after claiming that he was snookered and abused. And then Brad Rosie putting up a big fight, not filing the written motion after all, doubling down, saying he has no plans to withdraw, and wants the state Supreme Court to give the judge the boot. This is all leading up to what could be a very interesting hearing tomorrow, because two new attorneys have been appointed by the judge. And with Rosie's claims, his claims of impartiality of the judge, we have to ask the question, should the judge be disqualified? Let's bring in our guests. I have with me criminal defense attorney Sudi Chada-Jimenez, former criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi, famously represented Jodi Arias, saved her life and wrote a book about it, and trial consultant and human behavior expert Susan Constantine. Good morning to you all. What a panel I've got here. Okay, Kirk Nurmi, start us off, if you would please, my friend. Do you think the judge should be disqualified here?
We're probably at that point, Julie, because remember, it's not just about impropriety, but the appearance of impropriety. But of course, the ultimate answer to the question lands in the area of what happened in those hours leading up to Judge Gold taking the bench and announcing the withdrawal of the attorneys. Did the attorneys try to withdraw because of a conflict, or did she force their hand? It'll be interesting to know if record was made of this as well, because that is going to be crucial. Because if she, in fact, did do as the attorneys allege, that's highly problematic. It's highly problematic to the case moving forward. And if we talk about the death penalty, you can almost see that going off the table because, boy, the judge could be tainted, the case is tainted, the attorney relationships are tainted. So, yeah, this is a big mess that's going to need to be unraveled before this case can go forward.
Kirk Nurmi, I know you're enjoying retirement, but I got to tell you, my friend, you ought to teach law school. That is such a great point about whether there was a record. And so for all of our wonderful courties at home that love this stuff, sometimes attorneys do meetings in the judge's chambers and there will not be a court reporter present taking everything down, or a stenographer, as they're called in some states. Court reporter is a reference in others. So if, let's say, this was an off-the-record kind of discussion, to your point, Kirk, could be really problematic, their word, against the judge's word. Sudi Chada-Jimenez, first of all, welcome back. We missed you on Court TV Live. You've been picking a jury for like 9 months. Literally, I'm not being funny. You have been picking a jury for 9 months. One very big high-profile case, the YSL case in Atlanta. So glad you're free from that for the time being. How do you see this playing out?
Well, if it's my understanding, I think this is directly linked to the evidence leak, and asking for an attorney to be removed, it is an extreme measure, I think. Maybe the judge has good reasons for it, but again, we need to go back to the transcript. We need to go back to the record. And in such a high-profile case, it should be best practices that anything that is talked about, even if it's in chambers, there is a transcript of it done, even if it's ex parte and even if it's going to be under seal. And I think one of the attorneys is saying that they want the Supreme Court involved, and that's probably what's going to end up happening, because we need to remember that the accused, the defendant in this case, still has a Sixth Amendment right to counsel and has expressed that they want to keep these attorneys. So for one reason or another, if one attorney is saying, no, I don't want to withdraw, I am being forced to withdraw, somebody impartial needs to take a look into this. And it might be that they need to reshuffle, they need to assign a new judge, especially because we're just at the beginning stages. We're not talking about mid-trial, a jury sitting right there with a lot of stuff having already happened. This is the good timing for there to be a new judge assigned to it if there is the appearance of impropriety. Not saying the judge did anything wrong, but you don't want to have that taint and possibly have a conviction reversed in the future.
Well said, Sudi. Well said. Yeah, I mean, this is Ooh, this presents all kinds of problems looking down the road of appeal. And you mentioned impartiality. We know that is the allegation from the defense team. Brad Rosie, writing that in the motion. Susan Constantine, last but certainly not least, you detect impartiality for a living. You are a jury consultant. You sit there and make recommendations. Give us your take on this, if you would, please, Susan.
So when I'm looking at all of this, I want to know more about what happened behind those closed doors. As both of them stated, we don't know. We don't have anybody in there, or we don't know if there was someone in there that overheard. So we don't know exactly. So I want to err on we don't know enough. So we don't really know what transpired. We don't know what she said. We don't really know what he said. But I even know as a mediator that I think that this could have been resolved. But for some reason or another, there was so much antagonistic, this relationship, that this judge ruled so strongly. So there's part of me that says she had reason for that. And then I look at the other side and I go, well, if Alan really wanted to keep this, keep these attorneys, then he has the right to. So in my opinion, maybe get rid of all of them, and you just start fresh.
Right, Susan? And that might be what happens here. We know the judge technically has already appointed 2 new lawyers, and she's essentially saying to Brad Rosie, hey, clerk of court, strike his filings. We're not even paying attention to what you're saying because you're off the case. This is really something. So whoever it is, we don't know who it's going to be. They've got a mighty tall order on their hands and lots of issues surrounding this case. So it raises the question, is his defense going to be impacted? Is Richard Allen's defense at trial going to be impacted by this legal disaster going on in Delphi? Back to you, please, Kirk Nurmi.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Mr. Allen has these attorneys that apparently he wants to retain and that want to be on the case. And then he has these new attorneys. Well, he's probably not going to be fully invested in these new attorneys. He's going to see them as a temporary holding pattern, right? And it's that interference with that attorney-client relationship in the Sixth Amendment. And that's why I talk about the possibility of the death penalty sliding off the table, at least at the appellate level, because of this interference. I mean, this is huge. So he's going to have these attorneys, but he's probably not going to be paying too much attention to them until it's resolved, until all this is resolved. Like I say, that's why I think it's going to be very difficult for the case to move forward.
Appreciate it, Kirk. Sudi Chadi Jimenez, what do you say about this, please?
I mean, the reality is that even the new attorneys are appointed, correct? He has been deemed indigent, and he's entitled to a defense, and for that defense to be provided by the state. I have nothing to say that could justify saying that these new attorneys are not capable of giving him the best possible defense. And also the previous attorneys have agreed to cooperate because ultimately, even in messy situations like this, our oath, our duty is to the client. So they are willing to cooperate. They're not required to turn over any work product, but I'm sure they're gonna, in a way, now he has a team of 4 attorneys. But it's still, it doesn't feel right to force somebody to withdraw. The only thing I can think of is when somebody has obviously violated their oath, has broken court rules, has committed a crime maybe, but it doesn't seem like that's what's going on here. It might be just too many personalities clashing, and the reality is that happens, and judges should have other ways to deal with it than forcefully removing an attorney.
You're right, Sudi. It happens a lot in criminal courthouses. You all know that well. Susan Constantine, take us home. If you were advising the Richard Allen defense team, you're their jury consultant, would you be concerned that the legal defense is being affected by what's happening here?
I do, because, the client is the person who is being accused, right? So that's the number one foremost important part. And when you have trust and rapport, you can't just duplicate that. Once that's been destroyed, it's hard to rebuild trust and rapport. So my advice would be is they need to figure out a way to settle this and get outside of the public eye and be adults and work it out. This is crazy. Nothing good is going to come out of this the way it's going right now.
Preach, Susan, preach. Susan Constantine, Sudi Chadi Jimenez, we have to say goodbye and a big thank you to both of you. We'll see you very soon. Kirk Nurmi's going to stick around with us. Want you to do the same, please. Here's what's coming up right after this break.
Rachel loved people. She loved people, and it's evident by all the people that have known her or in some way have been touched by her life.
We're spotlighting the hunt for Rachel Morin's killer, talking with her sister live on the show this morning and the local sheriff as her case is approaching a grim milestone. And we're gearing up for another day of testimony in the dentist mastermind murder trial. But could evidence in Charlie's case implicate Sister Wendy in the murder for hire plot?
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist,
accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt